Thank you, folks. Here we are at the Jackson Select Board meeting, October 22nd. And I'd like to call that meeting to order. 3:30 here at a regular meeting. First, we'd like to do a quick presentation to our former selectman who has left, but Mr. Robert Thompson. Apparently, we have to change his name on the list. We don't want to make you stay too long, but we do have a little present, parting gifts if you come up and accept it. And
it's not ticking.
No, this doesn't tick.
Yeah, this
Thank you very much for all your service. And
yes.
We don't want you to open it here.
Okay.
Alrighty, but appreciate everything you've done for us and the town, for that matter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dick, thank you for stepping in.
Hard to shake hands this way.
Giving me the opportunity.
Made him come around.
You bet.
But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
Thanks.
Welcome to the backbenchers.
Sit in the back, Jack.
Sit back here with us now.
All right.
I know.
Item number 2 will be approval of the minutes from our October 8th meeting. I'll entertain a motion for that approval.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes
I will
as
second
written.
them.
All righty. Any discussion on those?
No.
Questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We got diagrams. I love diagrams.
Oh, pictures, yay.
I love diagrams. Alrighty. Item number 3 will be action items. Copy.
Thank you.
Nothing really on the docket, nothing really burning our souls here. If anybody has anything to add to that, or, we can add to this today when we open up a new business. But November meetings will be the 12th and 26th, regularly the second, fourth week, I should say, at 3:30 here. But we are going to make a slight change for December because of the holidays. That will go to the 1st and 3rd. So it'll be the 3rd of December and the 17th. And so it'll be the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of the month. So, alrighty, anybody have anything on that? Any
Nope.
action items or anything?
Nope.
Are we gonna discuss the school bus parking? Do we need to?
Yeah, we will. It's on old business there.
Oh, there it is, right there, school bus parking.
We'll get there, Dick. I know you're impatient. Moving on to building inspector and Kevin in his weekly report. You got quite a few here today, bud, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here.
Broke 100.
Let me just go down this list. I'll just say what number and if there's any issues. Number 1's pretty straightforward. Number 2, I was just there this afternoon, met the owner. Everything's good there. And actually, number 3, they're putting the sign in today, I saw. We're working on it. 4, 5, and 6, that was the propane issue we had over at the Nesselnook. And part A, that's with the first contractor finally got finished. They fixed all their mistakes, and that's where I met with the fire marshal and the fire chief. And now the next company is going to come in and take over and finish up their work, so they're good to go. And I'll follow up on that. I talked to the person in charge from Berlin on that job and mentioned a couple issues I had over there, and they're all going to get fixed. So
Good.
I'll watch that.
Nice catch on that.
Yeah.
And number 7, yeah, I got to go check that job. Haven't been there yet.
Not easy access there.
No, that's right. Number 8, same thing. I don't even think they did the work yet. Number 9. That's a renewal. That's going up Route 16. I've been there many times because the plans that were issued, they were just generic plans, and I put a lot of notes on there a year ago about because they were all designed for snow loads, like not up here for 90 pounds per square foot. So I made all these marks on there, and then he started changing some stuff, and so I've been questioning him on a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of engineered wood in there, and I told him to call Bosie on a lot of stuff for their engineers to figure out, to submit, and then I approved it, and so there's some changes there. I would have done some things different up there, but so that's on another note. So that's going good anyway. And I was just there. I just came back from there. Let me see. Oh, number 10. That's going to be a total full house remodel. That's starting up. Number 11, that hasn't been done yet. And number 12, that's all done, all set. And I had another job that's going on up on Carter Notch Road. I had a big concern about it because of the, had to do with the heating system, hot water, and probably a kitchen stove. And anyway, I called the fire marshal about it too, because they got 20-pound cylinders inside the house, and they got like 4 of them in series. And there's a problem with that because you can't, you're turning off the gas every time they change a cylinder. And by code, when you turn off the gas, so the lines have to be pressure checked after every time you turn them off and turn them back on, so you can't do that. Another thing too is there's no way they're getting enough vapor pressure to run the appliances, for the amount of fuel that they require, especially the hot water heater. And
So they need a big single tank?
well, yeah, big signal tank, you get all that surface area, so you get enough vapor pressure, especially as the temperature goes down, you get less vapor pressure as it gets colder outside. So, yeah, I don't know why they do that, but anyway. And then I noticed too, when they unhooked everything, they unhooked the appliances, the hot water heater, the stove, and they didn't cap the ends, but the tanks were still hooked up.
Oh.
That's like a big no-no.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's all gone. They finally unhooked the tanks and everything else. So anyway, like I said, I called up Randy Sherman about that, and it's definitely a problem. So I've called the owners. They haven't called me back yet. And then another thing I found out too is all those tanks, you're by state law, no, I shouldn't say state law, but I guess it's a DOT thing, so it's probably federal law. You can't have more than 4 of those 20-pound cylinders in a car at any time. They allow up to 90 pounds of propane in like a vehicle with a trunk, or
Right.
so basically that's 4 of those tanks and no more. So anyway, so hopefully they call me back, and I will try them probably tomorrow morning again, the owners. So that's about it.
How long ago were they installed?
Those tanks, I think they've been there like that for like ever.
Ever.
Like, yeah, they've just been heating their home, and I don't know if they're up here in the winter time or whatever, but when it gets down to 0, most propane tanks, they're struggling to keep up for the vapor pressure. That's why you see sometimes you see 2 big tanks hooked up in series, and
Got it.
usually you get enough vapor pressure to run especially those instant hot water heaters. They use a tremendous amount of propane when they run.
On number 3,
Yep.
Thompson House sign, are they within the sign ordinance?
Yeah, they pulled a permit and,
32 square feet?
yep.
Okay,
I did check that out.
good.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Nope.
We have anything for Kevin?
All good.
Good.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks,
you.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, moving on to 5A, Gibson Center, and we got Mary Ann Jackson. Good to see you.
And Charlie
How
Maycomber.
you doing, Charlie? And here a little presentation about the Age Friendly Community Initiative, huh?
We are here to sort of celebrate what's happened in the last year. Some of you are deeply involved with Age Friendly, but we're going to each town, to the select board, to just be sure that the towns really know their role and ours to try to make the Age Friendly community work. As a recap, a year ago we knit 11 towns, 10 in New Hampshire and Freiburg, together in an AARP framework of age-friendly communities that then works across 5 domains to make our towns more livable. Age, meaning young people and older people, because what's good for young people is good for older too. So across the 5 domains of health, housing, transportation, outdoor spaces, and community connections. So over the last year, we did set up our 17 goals across those 5 domains. And we can report out that as of September, we're more than 50% achieved those goals and well on our way in completion of the others. Some are the kind of goals that are going to take 2 or 3 years to get done because they may take a legislative change. It may take, Steve Woodcock is working with us on getting new legislation that would make it easier to vet volunteers across our different services so that you can do the background checks in a more systematic, reliable, consistent way so people don't have to go through it over and over and over. That's just one example. So we want to let you, just remind, I think, the town and work with you to try to figure out how can we best let you know the accomplishments and the people in Jackson who are working on things that have to do with rec centers or how can we best include the services that you already provide in our resource guides that are being put together for the whole Mount Washington Valley, that then Service Link and 211 and some of these both state-run as well as Mount Washington Valley-run connectors. We want to be able to get that information that you all have out to everybody who needs it and partner with you. So I'm not going to here detail every single thing we've done. I don't think that's the best use of your time, but it's our desire to work to let you know what we're doing, but also then if the town of Jackson has a particular initiative around housing or transportation or an issue that's related to the broadband that's being bandied about and talked about a lot in the region, we are working with those other people to try to maximize the impact and the effort and make sure that everybody's work isn't duplicated, but it's also maximal impact. So as Emily taught me, collective impact is what we're aiming for.
Yeah, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. We're very much into plagiarizing, stealing ideas from others.
Absolutely.
Remember, you're on camera.
And you know, the fact that maybe one community is interested in doing a particular project doesn't mean that we're looking to have all 11 communities do that. If it's something that you're interested in and you're doing right now, we may take that and hopefully see if it can be instituted in some of the other communities. One of the communities in Freedom, for example, they have just recently hired a part-time senior services coordinator. That person has just come on board, I think, sometime late this summer. We're going to be monitoring to see how well that goes and to see if it is something that you know, other communities would be interested in. We're looking at, you know, we've got the Conway Rec, we've got the North Conway Community Center, we've got Bartlett Rec, we've got with Annette Libby, we've got Freiburg Rec. We're looking to see if there are ways in which we can pull all of them together and support each other. You know, one of them may have a program that is very, very popular. Maybe we can push people into that program to increase the activity there, or it might be something that we want to replicate over in Freiburg, for example. So it's you know, we're trying to generate ideas, generate ways in which we can work with each other and utilize you know, the programs and ideas that are already out there. And so far, I think we're having very, very good success in that. I started with, I'm heading up the Community Connections Group. Last year, we had about 6 or 8 people in that group. In my first meeting that is going to be held Thursday, I've got, they all aren't going to be there, but I've got 18 people who have expressed an interest and, coming in and working with us. So the invitation is out there. We're not necessarily looking to have people commit to attending and participating in every single meeting that we have, but if someone has got some ideas, some thoughts that they would like to share with us, we would be very pleased to sit down with those people. I was in a meeting yesterday with 2 other people, and the ideas that came out during the course of that half-hour conversation were, it was mind-boggling. So I think if we can get more people together talking about needs and other things like that, and these needs aren't necessarily translating into thousands of dollars to implement. A lot of these things that we have done this year, it's been $0 that have been needed. And in a few cases, we've been able to go out and get various grants, small grants, to push these ideas forward.
So one of the things I want to also add in this to stealing and replicating, through the AARP groups, we have access to people who are doing rural, age-friendly communities from Oregon to Maine and to Texas. So if there's an issue that Jackson wants us to think about, let us know, because then we can tap into the resource folks and say, how are you solving that in Tacoma? Or that's not a small rural, but someplace. We've been on telephone calls with people from all over, getting some solutions that they've come up with that we can steal. So it's really intended to be a two-way street in terms of the communication. So I think it would be, maybe it's a discussion point, but or maybe would you be interested in getting a report from us regularly, on some quarterly basis, of what is it that has moved forward, what issues, what programs, what ideas are going forward across the domains.
That, and also I think the sharing the websites for the 2 initiatives that you have. So the MWVagefriendly.org has the action plan and the initiatives and goals on there as well, and your contact information. And then on the flip side, on the HomeShare side, is the www.homesharemwv.org. So anybody can access the initiatives and information that are on there to learn more about it, and to contact Mary Ann or anybody else on the committees as well. And just because this is through the Gibson Center doesn't mean it's necessarily for seniors only, because one good example was walking trails and access to walking trails. There were some parents that called because they wanted easy trails to walk their toddlers and their kids on with strollers. So they had access to that. So it's across the board, whatever resources can be available to the valley. So, thank you.
Emily, have you connected with these?
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
can I say something? Now?
Absolutely.
I'm thinking it's a school board meeting protocol. So I've been involved with this through some of my other work. Just what we've got going with the Jackson Neighbor Care Program. I'm just kind of looking at our website. I've been in touch with Mary Ann. I think Freedom contacted me, I'm often sending the link to our town website on the Neighbor Care Program for other communities to replicate it. I'm just wondering if we should now actually put the links onto that site. So
Onto our
again,
age-friendly site?
well, the link to the age-friendly piece onto our site, onto the town website, and I work with Julie just in terms of adding that onto the Neighbor Care site.
And I was going to suggest that we do a quarterly sort of safety meeting where we bring together all the heads of the various departments and stuff. Maybe you might want to come to one of those and we can get a little more in depth about what we're doing, but also what you're offering, and try to.
Let us know when you have a meeting scheduled. We'll be there.
That work, Julie?
Yes. So I've got their contact info, and I'll send them those meeting dates. So there we go, cross-pollination.
Did you make your point?
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
We're happy to come. I mean, that's part of it, is you don't have to come to our meetings. We're happy to come to yours, both ways.
yeah, no new meetings.
Oh, I go to, that's all I do.
That's a good.
When is your meeting? How often are they?
We've got quarterly steering committee meetings, but then we're broken down into 5 working groups, and each group schedules their meetings as independently.
So this Thursday one you said was?
Is on community connections.
And we do have some Jackson folks attending those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
We've got-
and I have a health working group, and Gail Doctor is.
Okay, that's what I
on that.
thought.
So,
Yeah, so there's some-
there's
I think, Dick,
representation.
you're on a steering committee, I believe, are you not?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, when this
Sign me
started, got going, yeah, connecting with some folks, so.
But
So
we
it's that
welcome
linkage
more
that's
people
really-
from Jackson participating.
Anybody else have anything?
I'll be in there.
Thank you for all your work you do. Appreciate it. All right. 5B is update on the agreement with the Protestant Chapel Association. This is a renewal. We just had a big meeting, and obviously there are new terms and things like that, so.
Give you a little background on that.
Sure.
We're meeting with, Julie and I have been meeting with Joyce and Peter Benson to go over the agreement, and it's reviewed every 5 years at the outside. If needed to be more frequent, we will, but this was just a re-up for the agreement, and we really changed mostly the plowing and maintenance of the outsides to make sure that we're only using one provider, even though the town will be billed separately and the PCA will be billed separately for the service. We combined the service to make it more efficient that way. So that was one of the big conversations on there. And then as far as who's approving and managing the applications to use the old library, making sure that we're both on the same page and there are no conflicts in parking or usage or event scheduling. Did that pretty much sum it up, I think?
Did you have a chance to read it yet, or?
I did.
I
I
have
was
not.
gonna talk with the road agent to see if, rather than giving the church money for the plowing, if we could plow the parking lot and let them take care of their own shoveling, and we'll take care of the
Yeah,
shoveling.
we still do the shoveling separately as far as the walkways, so it really is the parking lots, but yeah.
So I would like to, discuss it with Pat to make sure we're not burdening him with one more thing where he goes, but
And I,
Never does that.
Joyce?
Is Pat involved?
no, I mean, we didn't discuss with him at all.
We're not asking the town to do it. We sent out bids to,
rather than having the town pay money to the church, whether we could do the plowing of the parking lot. You would take care of your own shoveling, we'd take care of our own shoveling.
the invitations to bid have gone out.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, just because the church covers some, we aren't paying the church, we're paying the plowing company because they have to be kept separate. We are paying someone, but we didn't feel like it would, or we did feel like, I guess it would be an imposition on the town to plow that on a regular basis.
Well, I don't know what would be more cost effective, to pay somebody else to plow, or, we're kind of set up for plowing. So whether that would be our best avenue, would be to do the plowing.
Did you sign a contract with somebody to plow already, or?
Oh, they will. They'll be back at the end of October with bids.
Well,
So we still have
Pat
time
will
to
be
ask
back
that.
next week, so, I'd certainly see if he, if I don't want to make it a burden, but if they say, no, we can get in there, plow out the parking lot, and if that satisfies our share of whatever it costs, that'd be great.
I don't really know. What was I don't know how the division, I don't know what's legal, what's ethical, I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the system, I guess, to know whether we should keep things separate as we've suggested, or I don't know, Dick. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think we did discuss this, didn't we, Barbara? Maybe we thought that it was a burden.
Well,
on the town department.
Yeah, I did think that it wouldn't be even possible or reasonable to ask him. Not possible, but reasonable to ask him. But the other thing is, just because it's not town property, the parking lot is not town property.
Mhm.
So that's why I didn't I didn't think it was
Consider it.
even a consideration. Yeah.
I mean, how would we, it's gonna be our dime,
Yeah.
to plow it. How are we gonna settle up
Build
with
the
them
church.
in terms of, we're just gonna plow it through our town costs, even though it's not town property?
Well, the agreement would be for the maintenance of the parking lot, as I understand it. That's what the rent agreement that rather than paying them the money that we have been paying on a yearly basis, we would just take part of the expense of plowing the parking lot. Is that correct?
We'd be paying that now, correct?
We'd pay
Yeah.
half the
Correct.
maintenance of the parking lot.
Do you know insurance-wise how that would be?
I would have to check.
Yeah, why don't we table this
Table
then,
that
maybe?
then.
Peter
we-
had a
Yeah.
comment.
Peter, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I think you have, we have some time before the bids come in if you want
Sure.
to talk to Pat. I mean, we're looking for a good partnership here, which works best for both parties.
Sure.
And, whether we, just in terms of numbers, last year, I think we spent $4,200 on parking. So if you half that, you're looking at roughly $2,000. Whether we save $2,000 by not having to plow, or are you paying us $2,000 under us plowing for the contract, I really don't think it matters. We're just looking to make it
Fair.
a fair shake for both sides.
The only thing that comes to mind is as far as when I asked Primex for the insurance,
Yeah.
they were saying you have to make sure it's clear as to who is responsible for what. So if we take over the parking lot plowing, then that may hold us more liable
For that
because
space.
we're doing maintenance of it on an insurance side.
We could certainly consider those two things and either
Yeah,
Well, I
say
think we
they're
should
not in
check
the
on
question.
it.
yeah.
And also because, they can come in, plow, sand, and be out of there and leave, a good parking facility for everybody. Then, anything that happens at the library or anything that happens in the church will have parking.
Well, we just put a table on this and check into those two situations.
Just so it's reflected in the record that I'm not asking Pat to do this. And somebody-
Just don't be around when it happens.
Yeah.
But it's hard to predict, what the winter is going to be.
Sure.
How many snowstorms are we going to have, how much, in that sense, Pat can't really predict.
And where it's gonna be on the priority list that Pat
Yeah,
has too.
exactly.
It's a Sunday,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
doesn't.
It may not be. Well, we'll check it into it, see what happens, but,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody else set with that?
Mhm.
Item 5C, municipal state aid. We received $6,518 from Municipal State Aid Group. What was it? Kind of like a refund, wasn't it, Julie?
It was an unanticipated
Oh, that's right.
amount of money that we got back from the state when they did their biennial state budget. So we'll be getting this amount this year and the same amount approximately next year.
And this will go in the general fund to offset taxes. So I guess.
So the one this year is not going into the general fund, it's just being applied to reduce the tax rate.
Right.
Assuming that's how you guys work.
So we'll never really get it.
Correct.
All right, so,
So it gets applied to our tax bill.
Well, I should say, we did physically get a check, but when I spoke with Michelle at the Department of Revenue, she said they were putting that, assuming it was okay with you guys, putting that towards the tax rate.
All right, so we need somebody to make a motion to use this year's municipal state aid to reduce this year's tax rate of $6,518.
I'd make that motion.
And I will second.
Any discussion?
No?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Take the money.
Take the money. Speaking of money, we also got a underpayment pay of, I guess we get paid up from an underpayment of $2,162. This is payment in lieu of taxes for our forest. We get, what, about $80,000 a year?
Yep.
Roughly, so this is to settle up the final tally, I guess, of the 80 of this 2,162 to make it even Steven, I guess, with the
Well, this was
budgeteers.
actually, it was a lawsuit that was filed from some, I think Utah started
Utah?
it. And,
Kane County, Utah.
yeah, there was a claim and this was the settlement.
So we were awarded this $2,162.
I'll make a motion to accept that fund amount.
You wish to second that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was second that.
All right. Any discussion on that?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Profitable day today.
Yes,
Take the
I like it.
I like when money comes in instead of going out.
Absolutely.
All right, lastly on item 5E is the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust. Ta-da! And this is where we get to see the charts.
Yeah. Handout for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So thank you very much for your time today. I'm William Abbott with the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust, and this is JT Horn with Bay Trust for Public Land. And this is a partnership project between the two organizations. I'll just go over the key talking points that are on this bulleted sheet, even though everybody just wants to look at the map immediately. So the objectives of meeting with you today are just to provide you a skeleton of what the project is and the timeline for it. It's a very long timeline. To solicit any ideas that you might have regarding the initial public outreach for this project, and then to formally request a letter of support for the Forest Legacy Grant application, which is in the works. So we are looking at the sale of the Beal family lands, which is everything in purple and orange on this map, not this salmon color, which is very close to orange. So purple, orange, orange, orange. And you can see that a considerable amount of the lands are actually in Bartlett, while the rest are in Jackson. There is an option agreement that has been signed with the Beal family between the Trust for Public Land and the Beals. And we are doing initial municipal outreach. We've already met with your Conservation Commission as well as the Selectmen and Conservation Commission in Bartlett. Select Board, I should say, now that Vicky is on the board there. The Forest Legacy Grant has been applied for to the tune of $2.3 million. That's approximately 60% of the project costs. And we will hear about that application and how it ranks next spring. If you're not familiar with the Trust for Public Land, they are a national organization that facilitates conservation projects, but they typically don't hold interests in land. So they tee up projects for smaller organizations like mine to then become either the easement holder or the owner of the land. In this case, we would become the owner of this land. One of the requirements for this very large grant that we're applying for is that it would be held in conservation easement, but the easement holder will actually be the state of New Hampshire if that grant is successful. And then we would come in as the quote-unquote takeout buyer and purchasing the land already in easement at its lowered value. The U.S. Forest Service will be purchasing these two lots up here. That's why they're purple and not orange. So those are the Perkins and Techwood lots at 163 acres. And the rest of the land, 1,172 acres, would be purchased by the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust. The future vision here is because it does cross a town line, because there's two municipalities involved, the future vision is to do something similar to what we've already done in the town of Conway. So we completed the Pine Hill Community Forest in Conway in 2016. That is also land that is owned by the Land Trust, but there's an advisory group that helps support the management decisions on that land, and that advisory group is comprised of the Conway Select Board, the Conway Conservation Commission, the Conway School Board, Tin Mountain Conservation Center, my organization, the Conway Rec Path, and then there's also room at the table for the Mountain Meadow Riders Snowmobile Club, although they're not officially part of the advisory committee at this time, to really bring in as many stakeholders as possible. So the vision here for this land is to also create an advisory committee of the two towns and the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust and other stakeholders that might be interested in the future disposition of the lands, just to make sure that everybody's voice is really being included. The working name is the Dundee Community Forest, and we really do want to make sure that it is a community forest, not just from a recreational standpoint, but also from a driving the bus standpoint. I'll let JT take it from here to describe the negotiations with the Beal family to date and the status of the Forest Legacy application.
Sure. So just by way of introduction, I'm JT Horn. I work for the Trust for Public Land out of the Montpelier, Vermont office, but I do land conservation work all over New England and specialize in sort of larger, more complicated acquisitions. And we were approached by the Beal family about a year ago. I guess Mac Beal died 4 years ago, and the property passed to his 4 sons. And the 4 sons went through a process and they made a decision to sell, but they wanted to kind of honor their dad's wishes and give conservation a first chance at the property. Mac was a forester and a surveyor, and from what I understand, like to beat around in the woods quite a bit. And the vision for the family was to keep it as open space and to have it benefit the community. So, but they also, they wanted the fair market value for the property. It's a big part of their inheritance. So what we've structured is what we think is a path that can both meet the landowner's objectives of getting a fair price for the land and hopefully community objectives of having new open space and community participation in the property and have it be open and accessible to all. And so our deal with the family is basically that we'll buy it from them at the fair market value, but we have about 2.5 years to actually assemble the money to complete the purchase. And so by getting that extra time, it allows us to go for federal funding, which is really key to the acquisition strategy. So that Forest Legacy grant that William talked about is sort of our anchor funding source. And it's a very competitive national program. So, I won't bore you with all the technical details, but the idea is that it keeps it open as a working forest. That's a really important element of this, that timber will be cut. But it also has to be open for hiking, hunting, fishing, and it allows the local landowner, in this case the Land Trust, in partnership with the 2 towns, to make decisions about new trails, to make decisions about maybe connecting the Tin Mountain Trail system to this property which abuts. All of those decisions would be kept locally, and hopefully, we think it's in the town's best interest, but we're here to ask that question and see if there's support for this. And ultimately, we'd love to get a letter endorsing the federal grant application for this Forest Legacy grant.
You said it was going to be cut as well? Some parts of it will be, or harvested?
Yeah, so the property has to be, we're only acquiring a conservation easement, and then the timber management would be left to the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust in partnership with the 2 towns. but the particular program that we're going for is for working forest properties. So the fact that it will have an active timber program is an important, ranking criteria, but it doesn't say exactly how it will be cut or how intensively or where. That would all be done, decided locally by the management committee consisting of the two towns and the land trust.
So there will have to be a forest management plan on the property that will be reviewed and renewed every 10 years. And that forest management plan would have to be renewed and reviewed, not just by us, but by the state of New Hampshire. So it has to meet with the state of New Hampshire, I believe it's the state foresters, or his staff would be reviewing that. That goes for all forest legacy projects. So Connecticut Lake Headwaters, has a similar forest management plan. This is a very small acreage for this, for the program. So we are going to rank very well in terms of its connection to existing federal holdings, in terms of ideally community support, in terms of recreational opportunities. Where this won't potentially rank well in the national pool is just from an acreage standpoint. Most forest legacy projects are larger than this. So that said, yes, there will be an active timber management program. USVLT has been in business for 19 years, and we have yet to do a single timber harvest. So we're not in it to cut down a whole bunch of trees. But it is very important that this still remain active land that is in active forestry. The other key point here is that very little of this land has been in active forestry since MacBeal purchased it. So from a timber tax revenue standpoint, there's been very little municipal funding coming in from these parcels. That will likely increase. Dick.
As I understand it, the town will still benefit from current use tax.
Yep, so the land trust pays either current use taxes or payments in lieu of taxes at current use values, depending on the town.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You said you're going for a $2 million some grant, and that was 2/3 of the value.
Yep.
Where do you see the other third coming from?
From Utah. Another large grant that, well, first of all, it is the Keystone grant. So without the $2.3 million, this project will most likely not move forward. So we're going to wait and see how we rank before we even apply for those other grants. But LCHIP would be the #1 state source of funding to go for. That will not be in the millions of dollars, but it will be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. There will be a lot of other smaller grants that come in between the $20,000 and $100,000 value, and then we will be doing a public campaign to raise support within our entire service area and between the membership of both organizations as well.
And what kind of timeline you said this was approximating?
Yeah, so the contract with the Beal family has a bunch of milestones in it, but if we can, if the due diligence checks out and the grant funding is proceeding according to plan, we'd be looking to close at the end of 2021. So, basically two years and a few months. And the little purple piece at the top of the map, which is an inholding in the National Forest, that would go to the White Mountain National Forest, and the East Pasture Trail, part of Jackson Ski Touring, goes across that. It's an abandoned town road from what I understand. That's on a completely different acquisition cycle, not through this working forest grant program. Right. It would just go through the regular National Forest channels, and we think that could happen at the end of next year, so towards the end of 2020. And that one, would look like any other piece of national forest. When we sat down with the Forest Service, they looked at all of this and they said, we don't want to acquire some of the lands on the other side of Dundee Road. It's outside the proclamation boundary. they did want to acquire that piece up in the north because it's already surrounded on 3 sides by their ownership. And so it has the ski trail on it. And Jackson Ski Touring wrote a letter of support, so they're on board to have that go to the National Forest.
Anything else from the Richard?
I was just wondering about the community forest. Now, who sets the regulations for the use of the community forest? Does the town of Jackson have some input, or is that like a three-way between the land trust and the towns, Bartlett and Jackson?
Yeah, so in Conway, that relationship, the advisory committee was established through a formal memorandum of understanding between the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust and the town of Conway. So it has all the selectmen, the select board signatures on that MOU. And that, is a pretty good document, and it details exactly how the recommendations, move forward and become reality on the ground. So that's the document that guides the legal process for who's who's liable, who's at stake, how do initiatives move forward. I will say that there was also a community visioning process that happened in Conway that was much more informal, and we would be doing the exact same thing here. So that was printing a whole bunch of maps 3 times as big as this, giving a whole bunch of people, anybody who wanted to come, sticky notes, Sharpie pens, envisioning where they wanted trails, really no holds bar, money is no object, let's see all of your ideas on paper. And then a lot of those ideas are now actually being fleshed out in Conway, and we did move forward and hire a trail consultant who has now produced a formal trail plan, and a lot of those original ideas are now in that trail plan. So so we really hope to involve the whole community, and then that MOU is a really great legal document that guides the process. I'd be happy to email you all a copy of that MOU if you'd like to see it.
And also on a letter of support for your grant, do you have a template for that letter, or should we try to?
No, we can give you a template. I didn't want to be so bold as to have you sign here today, but we can follow up by email and give you a working draft, and then you would edit as you see fit.
Okay, that would come to our
I think
town
you email me
administrator.
first. You can send it my way.
Great, wonderful.
Great. Yeah, and the point of that is to, as we go into the federal ranking, is to show that we have community buy-in, and that's an important criteria for the federal ranking process. We're trying to compete against 20,000 acres in Montana and things like that.
What are your odds?
Good.
But
we will be in the middle of the pack somewhere.
1,200 acres here is probably as much impact as 10,000 acres in Montana.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's really important.
And also just because the property was assembled by Mac Beal over 50 years, and it's still all these individual parcels. The scenario where it gets fragmented and broken up if it was sold back out to the private market is very high. And so while we're small, we think it has both high impact by buffering the national forest, having new trails, having community engagement, having outdoor education for the local schools, and it's sort of high threat, so that if the Beals decided to not sell for conservation but to sell for private development, it's very likely this land would be broken up after having been carefully assembled over many decades.
How is the value determined?
So we've done a preliminary appraisal, which has set a value that the Trust for Public Land and the Beals have negotiated around. And then our contract requires for a final appraisal close to when we close, that will have to be reviewed and approved by both the state and the U.S. Forest Service. And that's a very rigorous, it's the most heavy duty appraisal that you can do. It's a federal standard appraisal. So we've done a first appraisal to make sure we're in the right neighborhood, and then the contract gives us basically a range of value, and as long as the final appraisal comes in that range, we know we have a deal.
Peter?
Interesting.
Just in the interest of full disclosure, I'm on the board of land trust, so you might
Full
think that I
disclosure
would
noted.
support this, but just to clarify one thing, Dick, since there is public money being used for this through the federal grant process, the public will have affirmative rights through the state, through the easement held by the state for access, fishing, hunting. They're all defined. So it's not just people can, they do have the right because it is being used with federal funding sources. That being said, and having known Mac a little bit and always having heard, oh, I plan to cut that land next year and this year, and next year never came for, I mean, he loved the land, but he was also a forester. I think that this project kind of sits right in Jackson's and Bartlett's wheelhouse very well, of a strong mix of responsible timber management, multi-use recreation that this town is known for. I mean, if you look at, I was just up there walking today at the Prospect Farm. That's a great example of multiple use management where people are utilizing that for recreation. The town gets its timber resource, and we get timber resources off of there. There's a great partnership between private, federal, and town land. I think I would hope that the select board and the town would get behind this, and I think it's a great project. It's a great thing for both towns.
Thank you.
And Mac was deathly afraid of what would happen to that land. And I can tell you that from personal experience. And I think he would heartily approve of this.
That's important. Thank you very much. Anybody else have anything?
No?
You excited?
Yeah, wicked.
Right.
Definitely.
I'd make a motion that we construct a letter of intent for the grant process.
Would it help any private citizens to write supporting letters?
It doesn't hurt. Any local institutions, be it the school, a local business, are going to be probably more effective.
Understood, but
But I think there's two ways that individuals can get involved. One is to get involved in the planning process, which will be coming down the road probably next year. And then the other would be, there will need to be a lot of money raised for this. But if you're interested in just providing your personal good words, we're directing it to, right now, there's sort of a two-stage process. There's an internal process to compete with the U.S. Forest Service, and then to write to your congressional representatives would be the way that an individual could weigh in. So if you wanted to write to Senator Shaheen or any of the members of the delegation, that's the best place for an individual voice to really count.
Perfect. Excellent. Richard had a motion.
Yes, I will second that motion.
Any
And
discussion?
thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on that? Letter of intent? All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll do it.
You'll send that to
Yep, we'll draft something and we'll get something to you tomorrow.
Awesome.
And just, this is great news. I think one of the things just to expect about this is that we're gonna probably wait until we have a sense of the initial rankings to do all of the community rollout
Right.
and all of the engagement.
Sure.
But we had waited until we had a firm agreement with the landowner to come and brief you in a public setting like this. We're really excited, and what we've seen is that when you get into this planning process facilitated by the land trust, that we hope the whole community can participate. So people like to hunt, people who like to take kids outside, people who want to backcountry ski or mountain bike or, whatever it is, like the more the merrier and the more voices, the better. And we've done this in Randolph and Errol and Milan and Bethel, Maine and Meredith, like this is a real specialty for our organization, and when they work well, they're really fun projects to be involved with.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your efforts. Is there any other new business? Anybody?
How many of those big maps do you have?
I only have the one, but if you would like one for town hall, we can make one.
As it go ahead, I think that I've seen a little map.
Yep.
But this one is really helpful.
Great.
Yeah, we
So
put
it's
it
something
upside
that
here.
side, and I want to,
I have one at the office, but it only has TPL's logo on it, not our logo, so.
We'll get one that can live here at town hall.
That'd be perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
What?
To fix that.
Excellent.
I'm sorry.
Nothing, nothing.
We'll get one for town hall.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
all right.
All right, moving on to old business, 6A, school bus parking. Richard?
Well, I haven't got a final, but in discussion with the road crew about possible locations, one up by the garage, over by where the meter bank is, to them made sense for maintenance that they could keep plowed out. You have the buses there, they're up at 4 o'clock in the morning on a snow day, so they can have the roadway down available for the school buses to come down. During the day, they're back there loading up with sand or whatever, so if it's still snowing, they can easily keep that cleared out. I have to go up there and check to see if there's outlets available now, and if not, I understand there's a vacant conduit that we could pull wires out to. So I think it makes a good
Makes sense.
case for a location that's agreeable. In the meantime, they can work with the space next to the,
Maybe it won't snow this year.
just on Mount Washington,
After last year, right?
or just north of the Dana Place.
Yeah, just north of Dana,
Yeah.
that's right.
With John's house.
Yeah, really. All right, Fire Station Building Committee.
No updates
No
at this
updates
time.
at this time. Do we have a meeting coming up? Did you guys?
No, we
know?
don't,
Okay.
and so just sort of
All right,
form the committee and I will get one on the calendar.
very good. All righty, any other old business anybody have?
I think we still needed to vote on someone for the planning board, but that should probably be on the next agenda because of Dick's position on that and the shuffling. So
That's right.
we can probably put that on the next agenda. I don't think we're ready to, do we get any letters of applicants?
As I understand it, I'm going to take the spot ex officio that will just go till next March.
Right.
And then I could go back and just be the regular member. So we're just gonna let it go as it is. I think Julie checked on the legalities of that, and that's fine.
Yeah, and then was there one position open still that we were having to?
I think the only
Approved.
position that would be Betsy's, she was an alternate.
Right. Okay.
So at this point, we have not requested letters for that. Would you like that to be done?
Yeah, for some reason I was under the impression there was still one opening, but I can round back up with Bill and see, and then we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting. So we'll clean that up.
All right, so I'm just gonna wait to hear from you.
Yes, yep.
Okay, and then I have a question, because there is no selectman on the Conservation Commission. There's no selectman's representative. I had some conversation with our town forester, and he would like a little more response. He's had a little trouble getting a timely response from the Conservation Commission on questions he had, mostly for Prospect Farm, but coming up if we, in 2 or 3 years, if we have the Beal land in a community forest, we're gonna need, management ideas will come forward that we need a timely response to. So I think we have to talk about, maybe having a representative for the Conservation Commission.
Makes sense.
I think it's kind of slipped through the
You
cracks.
volunteering? You volunteering?
As we're afraid of that.
I nominate Bennett to be.
I can do that.
I'll second that then, if that's what I...
Yes, I can nominate Dick to be on the
Thank you. One more meeting.
liaison.
All righty.
There you go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You have to
I
abstain.
knew that.
Good thing.
Bringing
All
it
those in
up,
favor?
I am not surprised.
Do one of these.
Thanks for, yeah, exactly, that's good.
No, that's a good committee to be on. though.
Thank you.
All righty. Any other old business? All right, we'll move on to public public comments.
Yes. So I'm here, my name's Emily Benson, with my Deputy Emergency Management Director hat on for the town, to bring forward information to you all about a mental health first aid training that we've arranged to take place at the Whitney Center in February. This is in conjunction with efforts with the library. They have brought Justice Broderick to town on the 5th of February. And he is former Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court. He's working with Dartmouth Hitchcock's React Mental Health Awareness Campaign, also with a campaign to change direction. And his efforts is really looking at, he's been reaching out to students, educators across the state in changing the conversation on mental health and helping to reduce the stigma. And so in our conversations that we had at the safety committee meeting, the past, I guess, 1 or 2 meetings, teaming up with the library, we thought a great next step after Justice Broderick's presentation would be to then bring a mental health first aid training, and this is through NAMI New Hampshire, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. Bring them to town, right here to Jackson, and provide this training geared towards adults. But as you'll see on there, it's an 8-hour training course. We're crafting in a way we're going to try to give Jackson residents first dibs through promoting it here in town. I imagine NAMI will probably put it on their website. But we've teamed up with the library, the Whitney Center. Autumn Nomad is going to be able to provide some of the food. Nice. And we were able to get in on the schedule so that we don't have to pay for the training, which was huge, which is really great. We, as soon as that fiscal year entered its new...
There's been a positive money day.
Yeah, that's why I figured carry on the team. But there might be a little bit spent, but actually Lycan had some other ideas.
We might ask you to put a little bit in the budget, emergency management, health officer budget, whatever, just to help defray the cost of the lunch a little bit. Sure. But that's down the road.
Where is Judge Broderick going to be? Justice Broderick going to be on the 5th?
He will be at the library.
So if you've heard him speak,
has anyone heard?
It is not only personable, it is heartfelt, and Emily, I was lucky to see him through Emily down in one of the Carroll County, and I cannot stress the importance of him as a speaker. It's just an incredible experience that he went through. The idea being that if you get people to come see him, maybe they might want to actually step up and do something about it, and hit while the iron is hot. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the plan behind this.
So we're also working with NAMI and looking at, some of our police officers have gone through the mental health first aid training that's geared towards law enforcement. They also have trainings geared towards fire and EMS. And again, it's all about bringing those trainings north to have them more easily accessible. So we're in touch with them. So the 2020 is the year of mental health awareness here in Jackson. So great.
Justice Broderick would like everybody to know the steps about mental health just as easily as they know about CPR right now, to reduce it to something simple.
I assume you're putting this on e-news?
Yes.
So, yeah, this will go, basically, this has to, this is sort of a draft. I put in our details, my contact info in terms of registration. It has to go back to NAMI. They need to approve it, and then we'll be set to go. I do want to have a discussion with them in terms of the way they post things up on their website. Maybe give us kind of a first dibs in terms of getting it on e-news, and
Yeah.
space is limited, and get folks to register as soon as
And
possible.
what is the space limited to?
30.
30. okay.
Yeah, so I think it will fill very quickly. Certainly if we expand it beyond, the e-news and our immediate community, I think people are always jumping at the chance to take advantage of a first aid training. Tom and I did it down at Memorial a year ago.
I've done it twice, actually. I did it before that as well.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, we had
There's
close
no
to
mental
30,
health
40
training
people, so.
in the EMS curriculum at all. It's something that bothers me. There's no real effort to teach not only us, but the police de-escalation strategies and stuff like that. The worst, for instance, with an autistic child, if you put your hands on an autistic child that's having an event,
Right.
it's just going to make it worse. You can't overpower. So teaching people how to basically be calm, patient, and work through it. This training has some wonderful sort of hands-on kind of things, exercises that you do that'll really open your eyes.
But not
It's
really
pretty
hands-on.
amazing.
That's right. Not totally hands-on. Hands-on to be hands-off.
I
Yeah.
mean,
But,
you know
yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's some great education in that.
So it's worthwhile. There are a bunch of people out there trying to push this, and like, as Emily says, take the stigma off.
Yeah.
But I want to also kind of push practitioners, us, to develop our skills.
Yes, yep.
So hopefully they support us.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice, I like that.
We're gonna have additional logos on the bottom
Oh,
too,
okay.
so.
That's why I was giving you trouble about logos.
Got it.
Plus also, just on another note, that hazardous mitigation plan that we have to put together every 5 years. There's a draft copy in the office if anybody needs a nap and wants to go look through it. There are a couple of suggestions I'd already made to her, but if we could turn it around within a week or so and get it back, then we'll get the final copy set up and it gets sent down to Homeland and Security for their perusal and adoption, and then it comes back and we're done with that.
Were there many-
5 years.
Were there many revisions to this one from the last plan?
Yes and no.
It was an interesting
We
process.
dwelled on electromagnetic pulses
I
far
won't do
too
it
long.
last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, that was, yeah.
But everybody's put a lot of effort into it. The other thing that I was really happy about was there's awful lot of participation from the school. I mean, in the past, there've been sort of some worries about how to interact between the school and the town because they're their own entity. If you go in and, discover issues with the school, then they might have to argue with the administrative unit for budgeting, so that gets very kinky. But Gail came over, quite a few people have been involved with it, and there's been a lot of really good communication as far as that's concerned, so.
All right, thank everybody that worked on that.
If you need a nap.
A lot of hours, a lot of,
If you need a nap, go on in.
yeah. All right, anybody else with public comments? Richard?
I'd just like to say the new arrangement of our seating here is really helpful for me. I use amplifiers I can't hear too well anymore. So the people in the back of the room, I can hear you.
Yeah, I like it. I think the
trying.
creativity is nice.
I need a clock in
Can't
front
see
of me.
the clock. I know
Yeah.
that was the only thing.
Not that I have anywhere to go, right? All right, anybody else have public comments? All right, we don't have a non-public today, it's on
We
the,
do not.
Nope.
so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.